let's begin with a general question. You are a writer, producer, and event organizer, a private art dealer. Um, could you describe how do you combine all these roles and what brought you into the art world?
Well, it sounds like I do a lot, but very often that means I'm not doing much at all. It depends on the day that you talk to me that I'm doing something. So my role has changed over the last year. Right now, I'm working on selling art. Sometimes I'm working on a book because I have a book idea. Sometimes I'm working on the podcast because someone interesting comes along and I feel it would be good to get this person's point of view on a podcast. Sometimes I'm doing any number of other creative things. I haven't been doing exhibitions recently because it takes a lot of energy, time, and resources. All of them I'm very strapped on right now. I have a son who I also have to be a mother to, so that takes up a lot of my time these days. And
Yes, and
yeah,
yeah,
and the other
go
part of
ahead.
the question, how I got here, was that the other part of the question?
Yes, yeah. And actually, your connection to the art world, do you have an art education or is it just your passion? So, how did you end up in this specific area?
That's a very good question. I studied art history in university at NYU, and I also studied writing. So the two things sort of came together one day when an art critic who I knew from seeing him around in the art world, he said, "Well, you're always at these art things and you're a writer. Why don't you write about art?" So that's how I initially started looking at exhibitions in terms of reviewing them and giving my point of view about the artwork. And I guess I was somewhat successful at doing that because I only ever wrote about things that I liked. So I only have had good things to say. I wasn't really a critic in the sense of saying this doesn't work or this works or this is really talking about something timely in the art world. I never really paid much attention to any of those things. I just wrote about what made me happy or what caught my eye, which is basically what I still do now. And yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, are there any specific, art forms or art periods you're interested in? Is it mostly contemporary art or, something older?
Well, in general, my art background is in Western art history. But I really, and this is what I should have said before too, in terms of learning about art, there's never any end once you are into art, once you love art and you pay attention to things that are coming out of the art world. It's an ongoing learning process. So my background is in Western art history, but I really have been open to learning about art from everywhere, and that very often does not include things which are part of the quote unquote market, the Western art market. Things that we see that go up for sale at auction or things in the galleries. Not all art is contained in that space.
Right. And to give us the idea of your work as a curator, for instance, could you maybe mention some projects that are especially dear to your heart or were especially successful?
Well, one project that I did, it's almost now about 10 years ago, and it's an Israeli artist named Uri Dotan. I've known Uri for more than 20 years now, and we've done many projects together. This was the last project we did on the Lower East Side. And 10 years ago, this Israeli artist was painting Palestinian women who were crossing over to the Israeli side to go to the beach, or they were spending time at the beach. He was painting these Palestinian women because they all hang out with each other and their children at the water. And for me, it was important then. And today it's even more important when I think of that body of work based on what's happening right now, the current events in the world. And I think whether or not work sells that's another matter, and it's an important matter. But for me, it's a secondary to the creation of the project with the artist, which is something that you can carry on for life. Money comes and goes, but the experience is something that you can never forget.
Yes, absolutely. And what is your vision of art in society? Of course, many artists are responding to modern agenda directly or indirectly, not specifically by doing politically or socially engaged art, but by adopting certain approaches, styles, whatever. So, in your opinion, what role does art play in contemporary society, and what power does it have?
This is a very, very good question, and I probably won't be able to answer it in all its depth because you can always think of something else and something else that you could have added and something else. But I would say the basic role of art is to remind us of our divinity. And by our divinity, I mean the fact that we are all here as souls in bodies. We're embodied as that there's more to life than this physical stuff of what we see. I think that's the primary role of art, and perhaps also to connect us in that creative process, to remind us that it's not exclusive to any one person, it's not exclusive to any group of people or any male or female, that it goes through all boundaries and all classes and all colors. I think that at the end of the day is the real purpose of art. It's a great connector. If we talk just about visual art and we have eyes, we all can see art and get something from it depending on whatever our point of view is. It really is, in that sense, perhaps democratic.
Yes, I agree. And as an art critic and art historian, of course, you've been observing the latest developments. In your opinion, what what are the most important, trends or developments in the art world globally today?
Well, this is another great question, especially right now in terms of what's happening globally. So, just from a very local perspective, here in America, we have all this emphasis on diversity right now and different voices and male, female, black, indigenous, blah, blah, blah. That's one thing. The other thing is also, I think, which came out of America, the idea that people should be held accountable for their actions, and that the idea of your reputation being laundered by putting up art or being part of the board of a museum or in some way, shape or form giving back after you've done terrible things to earn that money, that has also become a thing recently. And now we see voices in the art world being silenced on either side of the discussion of what's happening right now in the Middle East, whether it's an art magazine editor who was fired because he expresses his point of view, or whether it's artists who are taken out of exhibitions because they're from a certain region of the world. I mean, this is not art, this is anti-art. All of that sort of censorship and deletion of voices, and this is not what art is about. It's the opposite of art. So I mean, that's what I think is happening right now in terms of how things are working in the art world and what is changing or has changed.
Right. And now let's talk more in detail about your work. So you have your YouTube channel, your podcast. How did they came about, and what was your initial idea? What did you want to convey through these things?
It's interesting because on some level it's very selfish, my idea to do the podcast or to do the YouTube channel or anything like that. I mean, I want to share ideas and I want to share art and stuff like that, but they came out from the fact that I was spending a lot of time raising my son and I wasn't out in the art world as much as possible. So then I brought those people into my world to keep the conversation going, to keep my own work in the art world relevant. So I wasn't doing so many exhibitions, I wasn't selling so much art, I wasn't moving around as much, but I still had the people that I knew who I could share their points of views or share things about their art collection or any number of things that I could still share and with an audience and still be in touch with all the people in art.
Right. So since you mentioned your son, you're an author of several children's books, and is it correct to say that you started writing them when you had your son? And so, what are the stories behind?
Well, I think from a creative point of view, we always work within circles. Like artists have their artists that they hang out with, they influence each other. So spending a lot of time with this child, who in and of himself is super creative at this age, but also based on his own background. He's the grandson of a well-known American writer. He would sometimes talk to me about certain things and we would come up with ideas. So he had an idea once and I helped him write his little book, but then I had an idea based on his idea, and that's when I wrote my little book. And it's made for children, but it's also made for adults because it's written as a sort of allegory to deal with contemporary issues using animals so that the topic isn't as harsh for adults to deal with. Because both topics that are allegories are about, one, the pandemic, which is another discussion which people still argue about today, and two, migration, which people still argue about today. So but it's good for children as well to learn about these things.
And how was it with your son? Did you read these books to him while writing, or do you read them to him before bed, going to bed now?
Well, not really anymore. I mean, sometimes we read them again just to remember that the books are there. But yes, at the time I did read it to him, and at the time he did suggest some edits, actually. Like he would listen and he'd be like, oh, you should change that, or this, da-da. So yeah, he was a very good editor, to be honest.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. I also wanted to talk about parties that you organize, and they have this artistic twist. Could you tell me more? What does it involve, and what kind of people do you invite? What are the scenarios?
Well, these parties came out, again, for over 20 years we've been doing these parties. Some of the first ones, again, were with artists. For example, I mentioned Uri Dotan, the Israeli artist. So he had a huge studio on the west side in the West Village, I think in the early 2000s. And we had another artist collaborate, Spencer Tunick. Spencer Tunick does these huge human nude installations. So Spencer Tunick came over and did one of his Friends of Friends series in this studio of the Israeli artist, and everyone got completely nude, went out on the roof deck. It was in the middle of November and they were photographed, and this was one of those creative parties where people were talking about it for years all over, and it was really fun. Everyone was in the spirit of doing something together. Of course, not everyone participated, but most people did. And every year we make a different theme. That party was exclusively mine, but I have someone I collaborate with. He's in finance, he's German, so he has a bunch of Europeans who come sometimes, and we change the theme depending on, he's a big fan of James Bond, so if there's a new James Bond movie, we try to coordinate it with the film release and then do a theme around the James Bond movie. But other times we do, like, I don't know, like this year it's the 1920s theme, The Great Gatsby, and we've done like a superheroes theme. We've done a bunch of different themes. I can't remember them all right now, but usually they're fun with the different art people, different finance people, different people from different ages and backgrounds. You never really know what you're going to find, to be honest. But some of the core people are the same.
Wonderful, wonderful. And going back to your podcast and YouTube channel, you do overviews of some exhibitions you visit, something that impresses you. What have been some latest impressions that you would like to share?
Well, this is an extremely good question as well, because for years, like I think since 2005, I've had this YouTube channel and I didn't do anything with it, primarily because I thought, look, I'm not a filmmaker, I'm not a videographer, I have no idea what to do with video. Even when the smartphone came out, everyone was making videos with their smartphone, I still resisted because I felt I don't have the information to do something well. And I'm still not doing it well. But at least I started. And I started primarily because I think people would be more open to seeing stuff in terms of art than just hearing it in a podcast. So yes, now I think the exhibitions are doing well. YouTube is a very interesting milieu. It's interesting because it's social media, but it's not. And it's the only social media that you can actually eventually make money from, that pays you for your content, assuming that your content is actually being watched by people. And the backstory of YouTube has to do with data, which we've been talking so much over the last few years about data. The basis of YouTube is all data driven, and that is so not me. I am not a data person. I'm not a statistics person. I'm not interested in that stuff. So it's really forcing me to again push myself and learn something new. How do you look at the data? How do you present videos on this platform which people actually want to watch, and you can see that they want to watch it based on the data. Like, did they watch it or not? How long did they watch it for? Did they comment? Did they not comment? I mean, all of these things, again, it's all new to me. So I'm really now learning that platform. It's not as straightforward as it would seem. Like you just upload some videos and then you get going. And now the platform is super saturated. In 2005, we could have probably done something and everyone paid attention, but now it's super crowded.
Right. And since you mentioned technology, I'm curious to know your opinion on the integration of AI in art. And there's been a lot of controversy about it, how to use it, whether to use it, and how to label it. What do you think about it?
Honestly, I have no idea. I mean, I've seen some artists showing at, for example, some of the biggest galleries like Gagosian. And those artists already had a name in some of the field when they started working in AI. I myself used AI for some of the images in my books. So what I've learned so far in terms of publishing is if you've gotten the image from AI, everything in the book that you've created is your copyright, but the AI can never be your copyright. So I think that's fine. If you made it and you put it in your book, you don't have the rights over that image. Anyone can use it. But in terms of artwork, I mean, some people are doing interesting things. Again, I think if you use it as a tool and you then add something to it, it becomes your own. That's how they deal with copyright issues right now. Like if you've appropriated this painting and then you put some things on top or you paint on top of it, then you've changed it enough to become your own. And it's the same with YouTube. If you take someone's video and you just repost it, that's copyrighted. But if you've altered it and added things and made it something different, it becomes your own content. So I think the same applies to AI. I mean, in terms of like NFTs, which is not necessarily AI, but it is still technology and art, I really believe that even though the market is soft now for NFTs, like people aren't talking about it as much as they were a year ago or so, I think it's a medium that has given a lot of artists a platform that they didn't have before. They were creative, they just didn't have a paintbrush or they just didn't have sculpture. But I know some artists myself who, thanks to NFTs, all the work they had been doing for 10, 15 years finally got an audience. Not just, Mr. whatever his name is, I forget the really big NFT guy, but stuff like that, it's not going away. It may be quiet, but it's not going to go away.
Right. And lastly, do you have any upcoming projects or ideas you would like to share?
That's a good idea. I mean, what I really want to share is the YouTube channel. I think Nicolette Ramirez, my name is the YouTube channel, and I want to share it because I really want to grow an audience there for future projects that I'm doing, whether it's an exhibition, whether it's a book, whether it's a podcast. I mean, the podcasts aren't really listened to on YouTube. Again, there's no visuals, it's just the sound. But in the future, I'll be doing more visual stuff with the podcast and with exhibitions and stuff like that. So I really want to promote that right now in terms of future projects. I'm not sure what I'm working on with artists. Artists ask me for help all the time. But again, it takes a lot of energy to work with artists. And right now, I just don't have that bandwidth to do stuff with them. Even recently, one artist who's in Vienna, he asked me to look at something for him. It took me 3 or 4 days before I remembered that he asked me this. Then I went back to it and I was like, shoot, you know, in the old days I used to just get back to everyone right away, but now it's just exhausting.
Yes, I understand. I think that's it from me. I'll work on the interview. I'll write the text. I send it to you for review, so you can adjust if necessary.
Okay.
And I would need a few photographs of you and some photos of your projects
Okay.
that would illustrate our conversation.
Okay. I'll look for some.
Yeah?
Okay. Do you need it by a certain date?
No, so you can send it to me at your convenience.
Okay.
Anyway, first I'll work on the interview. It will take me about a week or two. You can send it before if you have time and you remember, or when you get the text, and you'll just find photos that are relevant.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.